This car, is one of the hit cars of the year, is the Lamborghini Revuelto.
It's gotta be.
When you see it in person, it looks like a spaceship. We always say that. It's like an alien, something from out of this world, but that's Lamborghini. Next on the list, M2 CS. I mean,
no kidding.
That doesn't surprise me one bit, if I'm being honest.
Really?
Should be at the top of the list, but that is what it is. For us, needs to be at the top, if not the top of the list, is the ZR1. It's, I think it's got to be the car of the year. It's blowing everything out of the water.
Yeah,
it's unreal.
I think so it just broke some record. I forget what track they were on. Welcome back to the Label Podcast, guys. Andy here with my boy Justin here. He's got a laptop with him today.
A little different setup,
right? Something. He's going to have some, I think, topics for us to go over and discuss before the end of 2025 and going into 2026.
Yep.
But in the meantime, I kind of want to bring you up to speed. Thank you guys for, again, watching all of our content, tuning in for these podcasts. It means a lot to Justin and I and Nolan, because we put a lot of time in producing these and putting some thought into what we're trying to talk about, and also learning on the fly, because obviously none of us are professionals, and we're trying to come up with, I guess, an identity in our space of things that you guys want to hear, maybe encourage some more interaction with us on what we could talk about in future episodes, and also let you know kind of some of the things that go on inside our professional life and personal life. So again, if you haven't been following, liking, and subscribing, sharing, please do all of that. It means a lot to us, and it really, I guess, encourages us and makes us get back in here and take the time to shoot some good content.
Yeah, it's a fun excuse to, sit down for an hour and actually have conversations, throughout the workday. We're so busy doing different things is you don't have time to sit down and converse, especially about cars, what we work on every day. So
That's right.
It was fun.
So speaking of cars, I think today we're going to talk about a few different cars. I think Justin has some topics put together for us. So I'm going to pass it off to you, and you tell me where we're going.
Yeah, I think let's get some opinions. It's towards the end of the year. Everybody kind of releases their list of the top 10, 25 cars of the year, whatever that list is.
Yep.
And we're trying to cater that more towards the performance stuff. And surprisingly, after I did a little research and looked at some of these lists, there's some surprising cars on there. So I thought, it might be interesting to get some opinions, kind of what we think are some of the top cars, our opinions on the list, and we can kind of go from there and build off that. So I've got kind of the blend of Top Gear's and Evo's list. They're pretty similar in terms of the cars that they got on here. Yep. So we can kind of run down some of these. Some of these cars are not available in the U.S., so we're not going to have too much to say about them. Okay. So we'll kind of skip over a couple of those. But first on the list, which kind of surprised me, is the Aston Martin Vanquish, which is a car that kind of has been weird throughout the years. It doesn't really have it doesn't really fit anywhere. Yeah. And it's just kind of been one of those cars throughout the years that it's really elegant. There's no real purpose of having that car because it doesn't perform super well. It doesn't really check any box other than kind of being luxurious. So it was really interesting to see this car kind of on the top of both of the lists.
So that's the number one?
Yeah, V12 twin turbo, 823 horsepower. I mean, they're big, heavy cars, but with the V12, I guess maybe that's the appeal to it. Is you'll see on this list is there's a lot of cars that have the big engine still, and I think we're getting to the point where those are going to be coming few and far between. So
it's not to interrupt you. That's interesting. That's like the resurgence of big motors, big power.
Yeah.
Because we went in this big wave where I felt like, 15 years ago, that was big. Yeah, like big power, big engines. Things were, horsepower was always going up every year. And then it was that push to EV and then hybrid technology and things like that. And then you started to see like the naturally aspirated engine or the twin turbo engines kind of come down a little bit and the EV pick up in that place. And then everybody pushing us into that, segment. And then all of a sudden, I think they kind of realized like, we're not really interested in going into that segment wholeheartedly. And then slowly manufacturers started to say, you know what, maybe we'll dial that EV back and we're going to push this engine or power plant or chassis a little longer. Then a few years goes by. Then they're like, we're going to release a predecessor and it's going to have the V10 in it, or it's going to be a twin turbo. It's not going to be an EV. And it's interesting to see Aston Martin, where I've never seen a twin turbo especially twin turbo V12
Yep.
released in a car. And really, that kind of reminds me of like an 812 class. So you put it into a Grand Tourer, big horsepower, V12 screamer, but it's luxurious at the same time. So I don't know if that, when the 812 came out and they had so many, variations of those, how popular that car was.
Exactly.
If that's something that Aston Martin looked at
Took
and
some
said,
notes.
listen, that's a Grand Tourer. It's a big motor, luxurious. It screams. People want it.
Yep. Kind of what Aston's known for is the big GT cars. And that's kind of why they haven't had a fit in the market, because I don't know if there's really been much of an interest over the years. And, the build quality throughout the years wasn't always the best. They're kind of unique to work on, which is kind of fun because it's like these, they're British or really random fasteners everywhere and stuff. But yeah, it is kind of cool to see a rebirth of the Aston Martin brand, which you kind of thought was dying off there for a couple of years, but it's kind of back, and some of the newer cars do really look cool. And this has got a new back end. I don't know if I have any pictures of the back end, but yeah, overall the car looks, pretty cool.
Pretty wicked.
It'd be interesting to see. Next on the list, M2 CS. I mean,
No kidding.
that doesn't surprise me one bit, if I'm being honest.
Really?
It should be at the top of the list, but that is what it is.
I carried it just because that's the top of your list.
Yeah, but no.
What do they like about that car?
It's, I think, just going back to BMW roots of the small, light car, nimble, it's quick on its feet, it's, got plenty of power for the small car that it is, and it's the CS. So, all the BMWs that have the CS name behind them, whether that's the M3, which we've had in the shop, the M5 CS, and, bringing that to the M2 is something special. So it's more, race drive for the track, but it's still very streetable and, just a great car. I think just that chassis in general, everybody loves, and especially in the UK where these are being rated small car for the small roads. Right. It just checks every box.
Yep.
This one's interesting. So the 12-cylinder, the new Ferrari. What's your opinion on these cars?
It's an interesting car because it kind of blended like the Roma in the 812 platform for me, when I look at it. And I didn't really like, what was the Portofino in the California? And, like those models always for me were like, you hate to say like entry level, but it was more of like maybe your wife would drive the car. There wasn't really anything about it that screamed like, I want to drive the car. It wasn't a heavy performer. It was more of luxurious. You might drive it daily, something like that. But this car is interesting because it is the V12.
A boatload of power.
Yeah. What is it?
819 brake horsepower.
Yeah.
Out of an NA V12.
So that car's going to scream. It's going to be nuts.
Yes. It doesn't look like it will.
It doesn't.
It's got a weird design to it. It looks really kind of classic.
It does. And that's the strange thing for me that's kind of throwing me for a loop. I mean, the car I think is sexy. I think it has some of those lines that we like from their Grand Tours.
Yep.
It's just when I look at that car, I see more Roma than I see like 812 or the raw power. And it looks like something that'd be elegant. But, we're going to get one of these in the shop. I don't know if anybody knows that, but we'll have one of the first ones in here in early spring. So we're really, I think, excited to see that car come through the shop, take a look at it.
I'm excited to see it in person because from the images, it is, I don't know, it just looks different. It's, I can see it's really got some Roma elements and kind of what they're doing now with that new car that it's kind of a renamed Roma that they just came out with. I don't know if this is the same chassis or not, but the breakup of the black on the spoiler, and it'll be interesting to see some different specs. I think that'll change the look of the car quite a bit.
Yep.
If you get a nice color on there,
for sure.
And some break up some of that, I think it'll look pretty cool. And if it's got the V12, anything with that engine is.
And there's some kits already coming out.
Oh, really?
For it. Yeah.
Interesting.
I think Novatec had parts for it.
Okay.
I saw, wasn't there one in MV's booth that had wheels on it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That gray one, I think it was. And that looked pretty sweet.
Yeah. So I think they're going to be a cool car.
Yeah.
I don't know how many they're going to produce, but it's on there, and it's on both lists. This car, is one of the hit cars of the year is the Lamborghini Revuelto.
It's got to be, right?
Yep. V12, 3 electric motors, 1,000 horsepower. It's, one of those cars that is, they had to replace the Aventador with something.
Yep.
And I think they did a fairly well. I don't know. This car is like, when you see it in person, it looks like a spaceship. We always say that. It's like an alien, something from out of this world, but that's Lamborghini at the end of the day. Is you buy those cars to have just this completely different look. Then it's not elegant. It's more raw, kind of, crazy edges, and the cool thing about this car, and I would like to hear your opinion, is, everything that's coming out for it. It's going to be one of those cars that is going to be built and built well by a lot of shops with a lot of good parts that we've already seen,
Yep.
and we'll talk about that a little bit, but the companies that are coming out for parts.
Yeah, it's one of those cars too that is dangerous in the world of being overdone because the car is so radical. I think we talked about it at one point of like, looking at other models and where maybe we'd want to create some parts from. And that market is already saturated. It is like, it's got to be the top market in the aftermarket
I know,
right now.
it's insane.
With like 5 complete programs, maybe 5 or 6 companies that have complete programs for it already, which I understand. The Lamborghini owner typically modifies more than, like the Audi owner.
Or Ferrari.
Or Ferrari, for sure. But it's one of those that is so radical that it's hard to, I think, do something on there and not have it feel overdone or gaudy. And I think you're always going to get plagued with that anyway when adding to this car because the car's so insane to begin with. Yeah. Like most people, I think you would walk up to this car and not know that it's factory, and you'd put a wild aero kit car next to it and you would not know it's factory because all of it is wild.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
for sure.
This car doesn't look plain Jane when you walk up on it in stock form.
Exactly.
Plain and simple. So yeah, I think that's going to be a big car for years.
Yeah, exactly. I think so too. This is a cool car,
Yeah,
the Octa. So the new Defender, which I don't know if they took notes from the aftermarket world building
It looks
this,
like it,
but it's got similar flare design.
It looks like
really really cool car. It's boatload of power. These things are heavy, 2,500 kilograms, which is a bunch of weight. But it'll be a really cool car. I don't think we're getting these in the States.
I thought.
I could be wrong. But
what did they have at Miltech, or were they making an Octa kind of based program?
That's what I thought. Is there's going to be companies trying to replicate some of this and take some elements off it? Because I don't think we're getting it, but I could be wrong. I'll have to look into that.
Okay.
This is an interesting car.
That is interesting.
So this is the MC20 GT2 Stradale, which this car, it's been out for a few years now. I think 2020, 2021. The MC20 came out kind of a weird spot in the market.
Yeah.
People that have them seem to like them.
Yep.
They're just kind of quirky cars. They have some really good lines to them. They've developed over the years. The new facelift on them looks really good. And this one, I think, with the wing and aero, is kind of how it should look.
Looks really good.
And we've seen, 7 Design House has a really nice kit for them. There's only a couple companies building parts for these, so I don't think there's too many of them out there on the road. But they're really simple on the inside. The interior's really really basic. There's not much to them. All Alcantara. It's cool because it is a carbon tub car, which we don't see too many of those other than McLaren.
How many of these are they making? Does it have a number?
That I don't know. I'll have to look into that.
I wonder if that's going to be one of those things like we'll never see one. Because the dealer that is here in town, they've had 2 or 3 of them on the floor at all times.
Yeah.
And they have big discounts behind them. And we have a customer that actually just picked one up that we're going to be doing some stuff with this spring as well, that he got a screaming deal on one, like 150 off a sticker.
Holy
and the car had
smokes.
like 700 miles on it.
Yeah, we had one last fall. He got 60 or 70 off.
Yeah, exactly. Brand new, right?
Yeah.
So it's really interesting to see Maserati try to dip into this market because I feel like it's got to be a big dollar car, and if they're already struggling to push cars, with huge discounts, I get it. It's a race car, but at the end of the day, too, there's not everybody is a Maserati customer. Maserati doesn't have the best following as far as loyalty, or best following as far as reliability or issues and things like that. And serviceability. So I'm curious to see how that's received, or it's going to be one of those cars that they'll give away and then maybe in 5 years it's worth something because they gave it away because nobody wanted to buy it new.
Yep.
And then they realize, well, we're not going to make a lot of them now. And now there's, 100 of them out there and they become valuable again.
Yeah, I know. It is interesting. I don't know if they're just trying to stretch the chassis as long as possible for production, or, this car actually performs really well, but they seem to like it. It is on both lists.
Well,
it
you
does
remember
look really cool.
McLaren 620R?
Yes.
You remember that car?
Yep.
So that car had a lifespan of when it came out, they couldn't give them away because they were a race car. They were discounted huge. There were a couple around here. And then like a year and a half ago, I had a customer looking for one, and he couldn't find one for less than
skyrocketed.
300 grand.
Yeah.
Yeah, where like 3 years prior, you could have paid 160 for one, you know.
It's crazy.
So I feel like this is like a similar car because you don't see the 620Rs. It's a really fast race car like a GT3 would be. And they weren't in demand, so nobody really bought them. And then the secondary market ate them up over years later. Maybe this is something that falls like that. But the car looks great.
It does,
I
yeah.
like it.
They look cool-kitted.
Yep.
That's not relevant. That's not relevant. Chimera. Okay, so here's, let's see. That's top, on most lists is the 992s. So the GT3, GT3 Touring. I think that's always going to be on there. They check every box.
They do.
You can get West Michigan loves the Tourings because you have a GT3, but you don't have the look of the big wing. You can go to Meyer and you wouldn't know the difference if if that's a 911 Carrera or if that's a GT3 So they are really cool. Yep.
So
Manual transmission.
Yep.
Great back road ripper. They're sick
as long
cars.
as you can get your hands on one, right?
Yes, but the interesting thing, remember we were just talking to a customer who had the opportunity to get an ST.
Oh yeah, that's right.
And the ST is very similar to the GT3 Touring, but it's more like a GT3 RS Touring. And I don't know what dealers are doing with those cars, but it was like got offered to him $600,000 or $700,000 for that car.
So what is that? 400 over sticker?
It's like,
500?
Yeah, at that point, that car's not worth it.
No, not at all. If I look like that for 700,000, I got other things I'm going on. I got going on. I think I hop in my jet. Forget about the car.
Yeah, fair enough. The 3RS Manti, 3RS. It is what it is. These cars are just mental. You'll never see one over here, I don't think, a Manti. And then the Evo list had a couple more. Oh yeah, there's the back of the Aston. So the Evo list had the Corvette on there. They had the E-Ray because I don't think they're getting the ZR1 yet, but I think we need to talk about this. I think this car, for us needs to be at the top, if not the top of the list, is the ZR1. I think it's got to be the car of the year. It's blowing everything out of the water.
Yeah,
it's
I would
unreal.
think so it just broke some record. I forget what track they were on, but it came across my feed last week or the week before. It broke another track record, lap record for a production car.
They're going for every track. in America, correct?
Yeah,
that's sick.
And that's not even the ZR1X.
Yeah.
So I don't know. There was a customer, actually, not a customer, but a dealer in Westland that had one listed, a black one. I reached out to him. I think the sticker was $215, and they were trying to get 45 over. And I told him I had somebody interested at 25. He said he had the highest bid he had so far was 37 over. So,
okay.
You're looking at that car, and that's 215, 37 over. You're about 250, 252 for that car. And it's going to compete with everything.
It's mental. Yeah.
I think what's interesting about it is where the prices will be in the spring of 2026 because with the ZR1X being released, not that there's going to be a lot of them, but I think GM kind of fumbled it a little bit with the release of the cars, making them very exclusive, the lack of being able to flip them, which I understand that, but then you're piggybacking models on top of each other too quickly. Like if you're going to draw people out or you're not going to have an exclusive number of cars, you can't just say, all right, we're going to turn the production line over to ZR1X. Who wants one? Because the guys that waited for a ZR1 or are waiting for a ZR1 and they're saying, listen, I don't want to wait another year and a half, 2 years because these guys are gouging me. So I'll just get on a ZR1X list and that'll be the end I'll be on. If I got to wait 4 years, no problem. What GM's doing is they're losing their customer in a mid-sale cycle. So they buy a Z06 and they say, all right, I want to get a ZR1. So in a year and a half, typically in the automotive market, at least the way that I understand it is, a year and a half, that customer's looking to move that car and to get into something different. So if that ZR1 becomes available within that 18 to 24 month window, they pick that ZR1 up and then a ZR1X is released and then they can fit that into that window of the next 18 to 24 months. They've kept a client for 3 vehicle purchases rather than 2, or possibly pissing a client off and losing a client and they buy another model because they have to wait 5 years.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting business outlook when you look at this car and say, what's this car really going to do? Because now we see Z06 is being sold at GM employee discount, where 2.5 years ago, if you'd have said you'll buy that car for 15 to 20 grand under sticker, they would have said there's no chance you are, and you're going to pay 50 over for this one right now. So now we're looking at the ZR1 that came out a year ago, and they started at 100 and 200 over sticker. Now realistic numbers are 35 to 50 over sticker.
Do you think that's too much for the car?
I don't think it's too much for the car. That's the other problem. But you've created this. This is what General Motors has done. They've created a segment of price shoppers because they're saying, all right, the car is $215. We're not saying the car's not worth it, but you put your price on there. So if you put the price at $250 and then you go to market and a dealer's charging 100 over, that's $350. That's a different conversation. You put the car at $215 and you sell the car at $215. That's a huge difference. So
for sure.
The issue is with General Motors and Chevy is they've never had cars in those price categories before. So if you look at McLaren or you look at Lamborghini and these guys, and they've always had heavy 6-figure cars. So you're not saying, wow, this is crazy price for a Lamborghini.
Yeah.
Lamborghini's got a car that $900,000. Nobody's saying, well, they also make cars that are $250. So why should I pay $900? GM's making cars where they're $125,000. Now we've got a $225,000 car. Now we've got add-ons to it. Now we're talking about $300,000 Chevy. Yeah. And it gets disrespected in the marketplace, not because of what the car is, but it's strictly business. It's the sales. It's the numbers behind what Chevrolet represents.
Yeah.
So now you're losing clients, I think, because you can't build cars quick enough. Or your cycle is wrong. You're not allowing clients to buy the cars. If it's an unlimited production car, sell them. From a business standpoint, I think in that case, your production, you want to sell as many of them as possible. And they're making the money on these cars. They're not giving these cars away. So their margins may be slimmer because we heard when they built the Corvette, especially the C8.
They were losing money, right?
They were trying to just break even or lose money to create that new want for the vehicle. They achieved that.
Yeah,
okay? We're
exactly.
there. We're past that.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about future models. They're also talking about a Grand Sport, which is another wide body variation of what they're already making. So we're going to get real quick to this point where now the brand's diluted itself. And here we are looking at a Chevrolet product again saying, well, yeah, but you're still driving a Chevy. Everybody's got them.
Yeah.
I was at hanging out with some guys the other night, and people were like, what do you think the best bang, for your buck is? I said, Corvette all day. You can't argue with it. And they're like, yeah, but everybody's got one. And that's always been the knock on them. Yeah, everybody's got one. So I don't think you're ever going to get away from that because of that dichotomy of General Motors as a mass-produced vehicle. If they break off at some point and start some skunk works or whatever, and Corvette's its own brand, and now they start to just do supercar stuff, maybe in 10 years you have a different outlook on it, but you're never going to escape that. So that's the thing that, looking at it from my perspective, is a little frustrating because I think they're dropping the ball on some of that in understanding the European market and how they handle it, and now seeing how General Motors handles it and saying, I think you could do that better. And I also hear the frustration from our clients that own all these other cars, but they're also trying to purchase a Chevy, which they would never purchase before. And they're saying, whatever. My name was on 4 lists. So I don't know what's going on. And then you got the whole deal with, because there's 100 Chevy dealerships, how they handle their
buddies. They're getting their buddies' cars and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's enough of that mismanagement in the exotic car world. I mean, listen, we're not saying exotic dealers are any better. And to be honest, they're probably worse.
Yeah.
Except they have the reputation of being the best because, well, this is we got 2 dealers in the state that offer service or, whatever. So they got to be the best, right? No, that's not the case at all. Yeah. So there's a very different viewing angle, I'll say, of all of those brands. But I think still the ZR1 is one of those cars that you should have if you're an enthusiast or you like performance cars, exotic cars, hyper cars, whatever it is, to give it a shot. Because I hear it from every one of these guys that have the car, that have other cars, and they're saying, dude, it's hard to beat this car.
I know. As much as they don't want to say it.
No.
'Cause it's a Chevy.
And once they get comfortable with it, and they realize what it can do and how easy it is to do things and the maintenance and the lack of hassle, they're like, okay, I see what you're talking about. But that's also where, companies like us really fall in line and say, all right, everybody's got this though. So what are we going to do? Great for us. So then it gives us the opportunity to create some, personal projects for these guys that make them a little more exclusive than everybody has one.
Yeah. And I mean, like we always say, you can't argue the power. And I think that's the other talking point I had was I think the biggest battle of the year, you know, in terms of lap times and all that stuff around the ZR1 was the ZR1 and the GTD. As those cars were going back and forth, and it's the two, you know, American icons kind of coming together, and they've got their development teams, and you know, some of it's unfair, I guess, in a way, just because it's almost like if you're comparing a ZR1 it should be built by Pratt, you know, Pratt Miller versus, because the GTDs, it's, I don't know, it's hard to compare, but you know, regardless, the ZR1 still blows it out of the water in every aspect. And that's kind of the battle of the year was the ZR1 against the GTD. And, you know, the ring time shows it. They're 2 seconds off. I don't know if you have any opinions on these guys still running the ring. Do you think it's still a fair testing ground? Should they be changing it? I can go back and forth on it. It's just legendary, and I think everybody wants, but it's not even fair with what the ZR1 did, because it wasn't even they didn't have their professional driver in it. Right. So, you know, what are we doing here? It's like they're just kind of playing around, and I don't know if that's because they're waiting for different models to come out or what, but it'll be interesting to kind of see the evolution of this. And it seemed like Ford really took this on as a challenge. Oh yeah. So I don't know if you've heard anything of coming in the back of the GTD, if there's going to be coming.
I've already heard they've been back there. So they've been back working to beat that time with different aero and things like that. Which, you know, to me, going back to what you said, why do they do it? I think it's nowadays, you know, you can see everything. So that's their marketing. Think about that. Do I need to do a commercial? Do I need to market anything? If I just go to the ring and I post my time and I post content from the ring,
that's it.
Hey guys, here's the I can go to my buddy's house and say, hey, you heard of the Nürburgring? Yeah. The Corvette's fastest around it. Yeah. End of story. So what other marketing is there?
Yeah.
Right?
That's fair.
Nothing to it. So I think a lot of that is done obviously for the publicity, and it is fun. It's a cool way. It's a cool benchmark. You know, the horsepower games are kind of gone nowadays because everybody can make 1,000 horsepower. Who cares?
Yeah. That's the interesting thing about these two cars. 200 horsepower difference.
Yeah. Right. And so you look at the car and it's got 200 horsepower difference. What's the weight difference between the two?
Let's see. The weight difference is, holy smokes. Okay, so 300 kilograms. The GTD is heavier.
Right. And the GTD is huge. We've had one in here. The front end of the car, you basically can't see over top of it. It just seems huge. But it's an amazing machine. The engineering behind it, that suspension, it's got carbon everywhere. So right there, you've got a street car ZR1 against the full race car GTD, which is a street car. I get it. More power, but it's lighter. There's just a ton of different things that don't really align, I feel like, on the two models. Like, they could be head to head, but they could also be like two separate kind of feeling
That's the
cars.
Weird part about it is it was such a battle, but it's not necessarily comparable.
No, I don't feel like it is either. I think if that's a race that happens, eventually that becomes like the Ford GT versus the ZR1X or something.
Okay.
You know, but even then, you know, the GT's built by Multimatic. So give us then a full street version built by Pratt, like the race team, the C8R race team, but not for the track. Build it for the street like a Ford GT would be. And then show us what the car can do. Yep. Because I feel like in that case, you're talking about a completely different car now than what we even started with.
You are.
And that's what I feel like the GTD is. The GTD is the Mustang. I mean, they got GT500s out there with 900 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower, but they're not going to put those numbers down that the GTD do because it's not built by Multimatic. You know, it's the engineering isn't behind it. So
yeah, it's really interesting.
It is interesting. And I think a lot of that ZR1 bragging rights is to say, hey, look at Ford's full race car. This is our street car.
I know. It's not even our biggest one either.
No, you could take a Saturday to brunch. And if you want to go out on the Nuremberg and wax this race car, go right ahead. Yeah. And by the way, this race car is how much more than us?
Yeah, you know? 350,000. That's the weird part. It's like, is it marketing for Ford? Because the guys that are even getting those cars, it sounds like they're not really using it for that.
I don't think so either. Most of them are just driving them around.
Yeah,
you know, it's not going to be
cool.
a track car.
Yeah, which is really weird.
Yeah, really interesting.
I don't know. It's you know, I'll be curious to see where that goes and the evolution. Are you, I guess, with the ZR1, what's your opinion on something like the Zora coming out? Do you think it's possible? Is it actually in conversation that you know of or not?
That's the like $1 million question. There's all those rumors, and you see all those janky like renderings.
C9.
Yeah, I get somebody hitting me up like once a week. Hey man, is this real? I'm like, no, it's just some guy, doing AI renderings. But the Zora is one of those things that I kind of feel like they've kept in the back pocket. So with the ZR1X, if that ends up being 1,200 horsepower with hybrid assist, I don't really know where you go from there. Clearly, General Motors has always been great at creating, I think, great power plants that have such a huge upside. If you look how long the evolution of the LT motor, when it was started way back in the 90s, turned into the LS, back into the LS6s and, LS7s, and then into LTs again, into where we are now with the twin turbo V8. Where can they really take it? I don't know. What engine development do they have going on? I think I did have a great conversation at one time. I think it was the Camaro Superfest probably years ago now, but two engineers that were in the R&D development for Dodge, and they were creating the Demon at the time, and we talked about the power plants and stuff. And he was like, we go out and buy everything. And at the end of the day, Ford is known for their trucks and reliability and things like that. Their engines, we're not really, they're decent. Dodge, we just make raw power, affordable stuff. But General Motors has been light years. He's like, we've chased them for 30 years as far as their engineering and on how far ahead they are of everybody else in the engine and engineering that they do.
Like chassis
vehicles.
Development and stuff.
All of that stuff. And these are guys that have been loyal to Dodge for years, and they're high up with them. And they were like, off the record. And they had Camaros, ironically. So they were very complimentary of like what General Motors does ahead of its time that nobody even really knows about. And a lot of the stuff won't come out until 10 to 20 years later. And a good example of that is the C8, because that technology was created back in the 60s and 70s where they were trying to integrate that into a production vehicle that never got the green light. So they just reverted back to what they were trying to do years ago, which you got to give them credit for. Maybe they were always doing that. That could have been something in the 90s and 2000s. The market didn't apply to it, but they've got amazing facilities inside of there where they can do essentially what we do with the tools of a manufacturer, right? All the rapid prototyping, no budgets. They can get a group of 10 guys that all they do is they sit there and just create.
Try to build the best car possible.
You spend hundreds of $1 millions just creating.
Yeah.
And a lot of the stuff will never see the light of day. And when it does, it usually has a big impact, like, this car.
Right.
And it's what people want and like. So I think that's where GM gets the bad rap, because they do so many of other things that they're just not known as a, performance car builder or manufacturer.
Yeah. Do you see it in comparison to like a Revolto SF90, those kind of cars that are at 1,000 horsepower now? Like, are we in the same playing field, or is it just kind of its own thing because it's so cheap?
I think it's in the playing field from the performance and the car standpoint. If you strip badges off everything and you just took them out and did things with the cars, and you said, pick a car, who cares what it looks like? You don't know say we don't know what it looks like. We don't even know what the car is. I think a lot of people would choose the ZR1. I think the reason why you don't choose it is because it's a Corvette. It's a Chevrolet. So you're buying things. We live in a world that's materialistic. So, you buy a pair of Nikes because you don't want Skechers. And the Skechers might be more comfortable, but you're like, I want the swoosh on my shoe.
Yep.
So I think that applies to the same thing, in cars. We like what we like in cars. Maybe your dream as a kid wasn't a ZR1 because the ZR1 in 94 was ugly to you. But the Countach, was awesome.
Yeah,
and you were like,
true.
When I get older, I'm going to get whatever Lamborghini that is. So, guys been shooting at getting that Lamborghini for 30 years or 40 years. And maybe we see people looking at the ZR1 now differently, even though the climate for the younger generation, getting into cars and performance cars is a lot smaller. I feel like maybe they look at that and they say, when I get older, I'd like to have, a Corvette because this is all I know of it.
Yeah.
They don't know the history behind it, before.
Yeah. As we talk about kind of the year end in some of these cars, the price points on some of these things is pretty insane. Is there like even, work trucks,
Right.
We're talking about $100,000 for a truck. I don't I don't know where that's coming from. I don't know if you have any insight on that. Like, even Revolto, you can spec it, what did it say, 450 euros, but
Yeah.
when the guys are done specing them, it's 600-700 easy.
Yeah.
So it's like, where are all these numbers coming from, and when are we going to cap at that?
That's a good question. I don't know when we're going to cap at anything. It kind of feels like you're on that ride again, up like we were 15 years ago before the recession, or 20 years, whatever it was. And it's one of those things, like, ultimately the market's going to predicate if they can build a car or if somebody's going to buy a car.
Yeah, people are still buying.
They're buying. And the secondary market hasn't slowed. That's what needs to slow down. Maybe it's slowing now because we're not seeing as much of those like egregious prices as that we saw on everything, 4 or 5 years ago. And you see some of the stuff temper off. I think some of the collectability will remain the same, so prices will stay high on some of that stuff. But eventually this has got to slow down because the market can't support it. Or the guys on the leading edge, which are saying, give me every car that comes in, start to say, listen, I don't want every car that comes in now. And we've had some customers that have backed off their orders for different reasons. One being tariffs, when the tariffs came out, and they said, listen,
True.
I want the car, but I'm not going to be force fed the car. The other instances we heard of people getting cars ahead of schedule when, I don't know if a lot of you guys know, but when you're a multi vehicle purchaser through like Ferrari and Lamborghini and stuff, you get options to purchase cars. They call you when they're available and say, hey, would you like to put your order in? And you'll usually break out a schedule of like when your vehicles would come in. So if the SF90 is coming in and you're on the list for an SF90 and I just got my F8, and they tell me your SF90 will be built in a year, well, I can plan. It's going to cost me $800,000. I need to be prepared for that financially. So if that means I move another car or whatever, not everybody wants to keep all their cars. They can plan accordingly. Well, some of the manufacturers, for whatever reason, started to speed up that process without any conversation prior and after the orders have been placed.
It's insane.
So, if you look at that, even just from a small perspective, say you were ordering groceries from Shipped every 2 weeks, right? Or every 3 weeks, and your order was $300. And you said, okay, I know every 2-3 weeks I'm going to have $300 grocery order. And Shipped all of a sudden started saying, well, we can't do 3 weeks. You have to stay with us. You have to do it every week. And you look at it and you say, okay, I could do that, a couple times. And then all of a sudden you get to a point where you're like, wait, hold on. I got too much here and I don't want to spend this much money. So something's got to break. So I'm going to step back from Shipped and I'm just going to go to the store myself and pick up groceries. And then if I feel like that service comes back within realm for me, whether from a cost perspective or a need perspective, then maybe I'll reach back out. That's what happens in any segment. You're talking about clothes, boats, shoes, housing, doesn't matter. So I feel like the car market is kind of at that space now where everybody's kind of looking at each other and like, are we still there?
Yeah.
I don't know.
That is true.
Because we hear those conversations, and we're involved in them.
Yeah.
And almost asking us, well, what are we seeing? And that's kind of what I've said. I said, I'm looking kind of next door too and saying, hey, is this really going to keep going? Is it going to slow down? McLaren had that fumble where they had 8,720,000 sitting on the lot everywhere. I don't think that boded well for them.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I know it is interesting, but I mean, that brings us to a point of like, it is actually good for what we do because, you're talking about spending $700,000 on a brand new car. When you have a prior generation, that's half the cost of that. Then what can we do to that? And that's kind of the interesting thing is like those conversations are becoming more frequent is, I'm looking at ordering this car. It's not everything I want. So then are we going to do stuff when that thing comes in, even though it's brand new and, mod it even more, throw, 50 or 100 into it? Or is it worthwhile to get, instead of getting that new 992 Turbo S, is it worth getting a 991 and just going crazy, rebody, throw 100 into it? I guess what's your thoughts on conversations like that versus getting something brand new?
It's all I think on an individual basis. A lot of the guys have those conversations, and I think that ultimately comes from the client first. They look at their finances, they look at what is important to them. Some guys don't care about the modifying aspect as much. Some guys are like, any car that comes in, I want to modify. So they look at it and say that when that car comes in, I'm going to spend X amount of dollars. So I think that ultimately, that's the part that we deal with on our end, right? We can't tell people what to do. If they come to us and they ask, hey, if I was to do this, what do you think about that? We'll give our feedback. And it's not always build the car.
Yeah.
Because, I'm pretty frank with people. Like, the only build the car is if you want to kind of hang on to it, because it will retain some, element of it being special in your collection if you have other cars, because it was tailored to you specifically. So sometimes those cars stick around in guys' collection a little longer. And when they sell them, a lot of times they'll go back out and try to find them. They'll wish that they didn't sell
Exactly.
them, so.
Yeah, that's kind of a cool part about it.
Yeah.
But I guess, this year there was a lot of new interesting parts kind of coming onto the market, new companies kind of evolving. And I think that's, part of it's coming from technology, just the ease of doing it, kind of like, you and I being able to step into certain markets and take over and try to, build parts. And I think more and more people are doing that.
Yep.
Is there anything that's kind of interested you, what you've seen throughout this year? There's been a lot of cool builds, interesting companies that are kind of coming around. Anything that's kind of caught your eye?
That's a tough one. When we went to SEMA this year, we saw some of them, in person. I did I think we talked about in another episode, that Duke Dynamics, Revolto. We saw the 1016. Was it Co's there? Did they have a car built?
The Zico Revolto.
Okay.
Yep.
And then seeing their SF90 programs. I haven't seen any of Mansory's new stuff. Maybe a G-Wagon. But a lot of that stuff is, I don't want to sound like I don't pay attention to it, because I do, but I don't invest a lot of time into really researching, deep diving, I will say. I think everything's interesting, but I don't know pricing of it. People will call and say, hey, what would it cost that? I don't know. The only time I really reach out and get pricing on kits and things like that is like if we have a client or if we're thinking about doing a project and stuff like that. So it's not that it doesn't matter. It's just with the amount of stuff that we do and the things that are actively happening, that I just don't have the time to invest in learning about all of that. So I think some of that I'm a little green to, not knowing every single kit and thing that comes out there. I do know the ones that I've looked at. Some of them are very impressive. The quality of the carbon, the way things fit, especially on the Revolto. I saw some really good stuff on those cars at SEMA.
Yeah.
Some of the Ferrari programs I've seen have really missed the mark, in my opinion, the aftermarket companies making them. And again, that kind of goes back to what you asked me a while ago, was where do you see us going? And I see some of these guys doing kits on cars that it's just not interesting, with no offense. When I look at it, I don't see anything that's makes me say, oh, I got to have that. There's not, if you're not changing enough, or you're not making it unique enough, or you're not having an impact. And I don't mean that just change something to change it, but you're limited on a car on what you can change and make it look like it belongs on that car. And some of the stuff I'm seeing, it just doesn't look like it belongs on the car. So I don't even bother investing any more time into looking into it, or nor do I even consider offering it, to be honest. Like a customer has a car and like, what do they got for the car?
They have
really
stuff,
much,
but it's not really interesting to look at.
Maybe a front splitter, maybe a side skirt, something like that. But there's some companies making fenders for Ferraris and stuff that I'm like, it's just not, just because you put a carbon huge panel on it doesn't make it special. I don't think, and it's a strange market, similar to the guys buying every car just to buy them. It's like some guys are building these cars, especially just in the more popular areas, just to build them. And then the way that, the world is these days, people think it's cool.
Yeah.
Just because you built it.
Right.
And if you don't support that, you're kind of poo-pooing on them. And so in that case, I try to stay completely out of it.
Yeah, I know.
If somebody asks me directly what I think, I'll tell them my personal opinion, but I also finish it with, that's my personal opinion. What somebody else decides to do or what they want to do, that's up to you. But would I do it? And I think that's the respect of the customer. The customer is asking me for my honest opinion. So I'm going to tell you my honest opinion, and you may not like it and you may like it. But a lot of times in these cases, when I'm looking at it, I'm just not seeing it, or I'm seeing it in a lens that if we made some changes, okay, there it kind of makes sense. And we've done that with programs before, or mix and match some things to make it kind of be
Right.
a little more unique. We can do that, but it's a lot longer conversation than here, take a look at this kit. It's kitted out.
Yep. Can you throw it on? Will look cool.
Yeah.
Yep.
I can't remember the last time I've ever done like a kit. It had to been late 2000s on a GT Street R, where that comes because it's all fenders and you got to cut it all apart and stuff like that. And that's a kit. But I don't look at anybody's stuff out there and say, all right, give me every single component off of here along with the wheels. We're going to replicate that.
It's perfect. Yeah.
No, I just don't see it that way. So.
Yeah. Do you think it's kind of diminishing some of the value of the OG brands of Tech Art, Bravus, sure. Novatech? Like when you have these random companies coming in that are building, the same chassis just because they have money behind them or what that is, and then you go to the car and you're like, oh, that actually the quality doesn't match that, $900,000 SF90.
Yep.
Does that devalue those brands that have been around forever doing this in the market? I
mean, look at how we get devalued by brands doing Corvette stuff very poorly.
Yeah.
Because then people call me and say, hey, is your kit $25,000?
I know.
And I said, first of all, it's not a kit. You got to ship us the car and we build it here. And second of all, it's 7 times that price. And then they say, you're an idiot and a moron and you guys don't know what the hell you're doing. And I said, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And so it's the same thing in that space. If you look at Tech Art's programs and then you look at Johnny Carbon that's making his stuff in China, he makes a full program and it's $10,000 and Tech Art's is $97,000. And you say, well, I'm not getting the Tech Art one. It's $97,000. Okay, then get Johnny Carbon and put it on there and go tell everybody it's Johnny Carbon. But why did you buy Johnny Carbon when it looks just like the Tech Art? Because you really want the Tech Art kit.
Yeah.
That's it. Go buy that Louis Vuitton bag with the upside down Louis Vuitton on it and tell everybody it's Louis Vuitton because it's $340 rather than $4,050. It's just the world that we live in. And I think those guys that play in that space, they know quality, they know the names, they know who's behind it. And a lot of these companies, they can build good stuff.
Yes,
and that's not to take that away. There's just the fringe companies. We're not talking about the guys that are building the wild stuff that's still, same cost as Tech Art or more. Stuff that's our price and more on Lamborghinis, on Ferraris and stuff like that. And then it just becomes design language. Do you like their designs? Not so much. So that's where I would draw the line. But there's so many of these other companies, and I wish guys would really, really understand. Just because a sexy website has carbon fiber parts on it and it says it's whatever carbon and you can reach them via email does not make them a carbon manufacturer. Does not make them even a business owner. It does not make them even an auto enthusiast. It makes them a drop shipper. Yep. At the end of the day, right now, we could probably go online if we want to call everybody out and find 15 companies that make the exact same carbon fiber aero kit as the factory. And you'd reach out to them and you'd get the exact same answer if you've got an answer, first of all, which is 6 to 8 weeks out. 6 to 8 weeks out. Do you produce the parts? Yep, we produce them. Excellent. Is it factory quality? Yep, it's factory quality. All right. So go to the next carbon C8 carbon supplier and ask them those same questions and see if you get the same answers. And you're going to get the same answers from 7 of those guys because they're all buying it from the same place. And they're all buying it from China. And China, there's shops that make carbon canards that are $30 a piece. And they make carbon canards that are $400 a piece. So since I want to make the most amount of money and I don't have any investment, I don't have a shop, I don't have warehousing, I don't build boxes, I'm going to buy those cheap parts and list them for even cheaper. So go out and find your, $450 all carbon fiber front spoiler lip that General Motors sells for $3,440 and put it on your C8 and then go pull up next to that factory part and then tell me how it's exactly the same. And you can't do it. You can play games and do all the nonsense you want. And listen, we've fixed crappy carbon here, right? We've gotten Chinese carbon in here. I've never lied about that. And we've taken it and sanded it down and refinished it. We've tried to fit it, thrown it out. We've fit them, grinded, shaped, spent 3 days making something fit to the car the way it should have, complained to the manufacturer, asked for a refund, swore at them. They didn't give us a refund, so we made the part right. And we spent $1,000 to make a part right. That cost $1,000. And at the end of the day, we created a part that looked good for them, but they didn't create that part. And that's kind of what I mean by, unless you're in this industry, unfortunately, nowadays the customers are just inundated with nonsense, and they can't weed through it because everybody's saying the right things. Everybody's got the right pictures. Everybody's got price listed. Everybody's saying they're the best, fitment's perfect, but that person's not coming to your place and installing it. You're not ever going to see them in person. They don't have it. And that's the thing that sucks, is that we have to deal with that every single day. I got to deal with, I got a Black Friday sale, and no problem. I wish you the best. And then, I'm the jerk because I'm not willing to touch those parts. But at the end of the day, that's what we have to take on our shoulders to make sure that we keep our name where we want it to be.
For sure.
And on the other side of it, we get bashed for then not taking jobs, or we get bashed for not treating them, feeling as if we're treating that customer as a secondary client, where, you're not spending money here with us, so we don't work on your stuff. Yep. And we'll get trashed in a review because of that. And it has nothing to do with that. It has to do with, if we've got a problem with the part, we got to stand behind it. And there's these companies that we know we can stand behind, and then there's 90% that we can't stand behind. So It makes it really hard to play in that pool.
Yeah, and it's tough too, because we talk about Mansory and Tech Art and all that stuff, and it's very rare that you get a part from anybody, whether it's coming from China, whether it's coming from Germany, anywhere, that you're painting, throwing right on the car, and it's perfect.
No, yeah.
So
sure.
it's all dependent on the shop putting the kit together too. Is we see some of these kits that are 150,000, crazy, super sick, and then you have a shop that puts it on poorly, and it gives a bad reputation for that kit.
Absolutely.
And that's the tough part of, I guess, the market that we live in, is it's all dependent on the shop, really, when it comes down to it.
It is.
If it's Johnny in his garage, or if it's a big name company out in LA, they may be putting it on the same exact way, and it may not be looking the best.
And that's the problem too with the customer, is that there's not enough of this stuff in the market where the customer can walk up and look at it done right. Okay. Show him it done right. Right. And then he orders his stuff. He has a shop put it on, and he's like, wait, that doesn't look like, this is the same exact parts, right? It doesn't look like this one over here. That's the issue that we have, is that you take those parts, you go to a shop, and they put them on. Well, you bought the parts, and that's a shop. They put them on that's how it's supposed to look. That's not how it's supposed to look. Here's how it's supposed to look. So they don't really have a reference point to say this is good or bad work. And then when it's put in front of us and we're forced to have an opinion, an honest opinion, we have to say, this is not right. We would not do this. Mm-hmm. And then they can feel attacked. If there's not a trust or a bond with us, they can feel as if we're trying to put ourselves above somebody else and say we could do this better.
Yeah, it's just not the case.
No, and we did that. We have that a lot in your particular business with RAP and PPF, is that people bring their stuff over and say, Justin, will you look at this for me? And or they'll say, hey, what do you think about this? And we'll walk around the car. And a lot of times I think you're too nice, and I'll have to be like, well, I know Justin wouldn't do this, but this should come off, or we should do this, and we've got a couple cars in here right now that we're redoing some stuff on. And that's one of the things, is that you don't want to come off as bashing somebody else. You can just give your opinion for what you see, and not take it, because you don't know what that other person, they may be working in their home garage with kids running around or whatever, and that's their business. Yeah. And the customer thinks that's the way it's done. So they have no reference point. So they come in, and we can say, hey, this is where we work. This is how we work. This is the material. This is what it should look like. Not saying anything bad about that. This is what it should look like, and what you can expect if you have Justin take this off and redo it. So I think that's really something that maybe we can spend more time on that too, because that's something that's been in the back of my mind for a long time, is like, how can we educate people that actually listen to us or care to listen to this? And even if they're not in our area, they can go out and do their own analysis and find a shop that fits, that thinks the same.
Yep.
And they can go in and ask those questions and say, if I buy this part and it doesn't fit right, do you guys have the ability to shave and mold and cut? And if we have to re-clear it, could you do that? Because then it makes it better for the shop and the customer at the end of the day, because expectations are, this is what we could expect. And if it turns out better, then it's a win-win for all of us, right? But going into it and being transparent with what to expect, what we really see, and even on our own work, we're critical of, and we'll take it off and redo it.
Yeah.
So nobody is perfect. And just taking that from a positive standpoint rather than you're trying to tear somebody else down or bash them.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, make it informational. It's,
Yeah.
we can talk about kind of every avenue of what we do, whether you're buying wheels, putting carbon on. That's a really good idea, just to inform people of when I go to a shop and I'm, in Florida and I'm going to get a wrap done and then they say they can put a front splitter on. What questions should I ask?
Yep.
Yeah.
And we've got some great connections too, like the guys out in Canada. Who is it? Kotawari? How do you say that? Kotawari?
Kotawari. Yeah.
Those guys are really studious, I'll say, as far as going out and learning like who the players are, what they do, how they grow their business, how to, deal with challenges and stuff. I feel like those guys are very realistic with the fact of saying like, we don't know everything, but we want to get better. We want to learn. Where do we start this? And they would be a shop that would really look at it and say, hey, we could do this better. Let's do it better. Let's start over.
Yep.
Let's do it better, because that's what they want to create for themselves. And that's really important. So, you in your own specific market, no matter where that's at, I believe there's a shop that can have it, or a person. May not be a shop, may be a person, through a referral. Because at one point I was a person, somebody was like, hey, here's Andy, reach out to him and he'll help you. And it was a conversation, or just we meet, I met plenty of people as they were shopping for a car. Hey, help me shop for a car. Would you spend an hour? And that was fun to me. And I felt like I had a value to that customer of like, I'm not going to make anything here, but we're looking at something together. And this could create a bond that could last into the future. And it's really been beneficial. So I think, letting our clients know that it's more than just a shop installing parts. You're looking for the relationship, the trust, all of that other thing, all the other things that are missing these days in our society where everything's online. I can go to Amazon and have it show up tonight. Mm-hmm. You're missing all of that human interaction, the quality control, I got your back if something goes wrong,
sure.
The warranty aspect of it, because these manufacturers do not want to warranty anything. And if you're buying parts as just a sole customer, you're already putting yourself behind the 8 ball, because when you call the leverage, hey, I'm John, I bought a front splitter and it's cracked. I hate this quality. It's terrible. You should replace this. No, that's traditional. No, I don't think this is the way it should be. It should be better. No, that's how they all are. Every customer gets that. And they say, well, I'm going to review you poorly on, okay, go ahead. We sell 1,000 of these, so we don't really care. You're forced to deal with that. You buy a part through us, the quality is not there, because first of all, the first barrier is going to be us, right?
Yeah.
We get the part in and we look at it and we say,
is it up to our standards?
Hold on. This isn't going to work. Customer doesn't even have a conversation.
They don't even know what it looks like.
No, we go through 2 and 3 different front splitters maybe to get the right one in here. And then we're like, okay, we're good. And we'll put it on now. And we'll convey that to the customer. Or customer gets it, it yellows, peels, whatever happens. Comes to us and say, hey, is this normal? That's not normal. Let me handle this for you. Email, photo. Hey guys, this is not acceptable. And you need to cover labor for the customer, because we're going to have to take this off for them. And the reason why they react to us is because who's selling their parts?
Yeah.
What do we have to leverage? We're a big name. We do a lot of business. We're in a lot of places. We have a lot of similar contacts. You don't necessarily want us out there saying, yeah, stay away from that. That's garbage.
Yeah.
So these guys are quick to react to that, which in turn, we want to make sure that we're also putting their parts on in the light that is favorable for them. So they know they can trust us, that we're not screwing them around. We're not doing it for our own benefit, because really it slows us down. How many times have we had cars stuck on the lift waiting for something to be remedied?
A lot.
From a manufacturer. And they want to make sure we're happy, and they trust that we're going to put their stuff together the right way and on the right way. So as a client, I'm telling you guys that you want to purchase your parts through a shop like us or someplace local that will have your back, so that when you do have a part, if you do or have a part fail, or if you have an issue, that you have somebody to go to bat for you that has leverage. Because nowadays there's so many companies out there that can just kind of overlook you as a sole consumer and say, that's okay. You don't spend enough with us to even care.
Yeah. And it exposes the reality of the companies. Most of the time is like you get a problem and all of a sudden they're like, sir, it'll be 4 weeks.
Yeah. Right.
Huh,
4
really?
weeks. thought you were producing these in New York. Oh, well, our factory is backed up with orders. Really? Your factory?
Let me talk to my production manager
Yeah,
here.
yeah. Could you send me a photo of that? I'm just curious. Where are you guys at in the production line? And all of a sudden, they don't have an answer for
Yeah,
you. So.
that's pretty funny.
Yeah.
I guess as we wrap up this episode, ending 2025, looking into 26, is there anything that excites you, something you're looking forward to coming into 26? I guess anything that
this year's
looking forward to?
different for me. We've had a insane trajectory. I would say probably a little faster than I would have liked, to get to a point where, like right now, the things that we're known for create a lot of traffic, foot traffic, calls, things like that. A lot of the projects don't necessarily align with us because they're singular projects. People are out of area. If the project does come to us, we would have to quick turn it. We're not in the ability to quick turn it. We don't have that ability because the shop's full. And, you got 6 guys that want to do an exhaust and a front splitter. I love it. Specifically the label exhaust. I've had a lot of label exhaust inquiries. I feel like that's something that's kind of been weighing me down from a creative standpoint, is kind of figuring out where we are in the market and where we should go. Do we bring somebody in that wants to learn, that can be dedicated to what it's going to take to be successful? Are they going to be here 60 hours a week when we need them? Are they going to be willing to organize bins and take out the trash and scrub the toilet when they're not doing something sexy? Because I feel like we could really use somebody that was multifaceted, that could do a lot of things, that could come over and give you a hand. Like sometimes when I help you with the wrap,
For sure.
it has an understanding of materials, how something affects it. And you don't have to know that right off the rip, but the learning and learning like, oh, I notice Justin likes it or needs me to pull here when I do this. That's something that I pay attention to when I watch you do things, and try to just grasp, so that next time we do it, I feel like not only am I a part of it, but I'm helping. I'm not just a second set of hands to stand there, and be told what to do. And that's something that's really important. We could use that in a lot of different elements of the business that would help us facilitate either more creativity, more projects, maybe more opportunity, but finding that person has been, a challenge for us. We've had people that have had great skill sets, but they lack the time to invest into it, or they lack the discipline to really be self-motivated. And that's the thing that's been, I think, most disappointing. I don't mean to bring 2025 to the most disappointing, because we've had a lot of ups, but most disappointing thing that is seeing the level of effort that people are not willing to put into something that they say is special, or that they say is a dream. And I'm really proud of what we've done this year in the short time frame of what we've done in the media side, as far as being more focused on investing into creating what we think has always been here.
Yeah.
Something that we've kind of strapped together for years. We've tried to bring guys in and say, hey man, if you hang in there, we can do it. Or if you, just give us your best for, can you invest a year of hard work into this? Guys are like, oh man, a year, man, in a year I should be top tier, and I'm like, man, a year, dude, I put how many years to even be looked at by somebody. And I'm talking about looked at, for a car that, nowadays you just go spend money and build a car for somebody to respect you. But respect you as a builder, you can't do that 1 or 2 or 3 cars. You got to do that just time and time and time again over years.
That doesn't happen in 3 months. Oh.
Does it? I think you get popular in 3 months, like on Instagram. And then when you run out of content, guess what?
You're screwed.
Yeah. Nobody knows who you are.
Yeah.
And that's really what this business is. So I think, from a content production standpoint, bringing Nolan in this year has been great, which, I think in 2026, we'll talk a lot more about that, and maybe our plans for what media looks like in 2026. So I'm really looking forward to that, because we've made some huge strides with the discipline and dedication that not only you and I have done, but also the editing and the stuff behind the scenes, where we can continue to maximize what we do here, because there is so much that we do here that is still kind of uncaptured or untapped, I'll call it. There's a lot of things that we can create stories with and let people know. There's been this dream of mine of basically telling my story, because I think I've been misunderstood for so many years. That's one of the things as I've gotten older, is to basically tell the story. My story essentially more than anybody ever has, but the amount of people that know that story is 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And I think people look at it from the outside and say, well, you've had it made. What are you complaining about? Or it's easy. Or, you get wrapped up in the materialistic side of like, well, you've had all of this, or you've done all of this, or, so your life has been easy. Well, what did I sacrifice though for those? That's the stuff that nobody ever looks at, the dark side, and we don't talk about it.
Yeah, exactly.
The world doesn't talk about all the struggle stuff. You're coming on here and you're hearing us talk about Revoltos and all that stuff, but you don't hear about what's going on at my house.
Yeah.
You don't hear about what's going on with my family, or what's going on with some friends, or health, things like that, because that's not sexy. We don't want to bring everybody down. But that's the reality of the world. And if I was listen, if I came into this and I had somebody stroke me a check, and my parents were rich and they created something, that'd be the first thing I'd talk about. I'd be like, I was lucky to do this because my parents did this. My story would be more about how I got the opportunity to do this, and now what am I going to do with it?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't need to hide from it. Nowadays, people get money and they want to come off as being
self-made.
Yeah, I came from nothing. I grind to get to where I am. And maybe you did, but your grind was very different.
Yeah.
People's grind is relative to the space that they're in. And you can't take that away from somebody being successful because they came from it. But I take the honesty away, the transparency away from people, rather than what am I seeing right here in front of me? Because I was for many years fooled by what was right here in front of me. And what was around that corner behind them was the snake. And when all you look at is what's in front of you, then you're overlooking what the pitfalls or the snake or what could happen to you, or you're devaluing what that person did to get there. So, there's a lot of negativity that can go any which way. So I think talking more in realistic terms of what it takes to be successful in this business, because now I'm seeing more of the people looking at us and saying, hey man, you guys are doing stuff really well. And that makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't want to be viewed that way, because we're going to make mistakes, and I don't want to be put on some pedestal of like, you guys have it figured out. No,
we're still learning.
Here's the beauty of it. We don't have it figured out. We will figure it out. And that's why we've been able to be successful in what we've decided to do, is that we didn't have it figured out. None of the stuff's been figured out, but we figured it out. So as you move from opportunity to opportunity, whether that's with people, whether that's mechanics, whether that's design, whether that's where the business goes, events, figuring it out is the key, right? And then telling your story of how you figured it out. That's how you make other people successful around you, or you uplift people around you. And I'm not one that is like, hey, everybody can make it, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
You know me behind closed doors. And I'm not into this nonsense on Instagram where we post all this positive quotes and uplifting quotes. And, because when you see that, the majority of people don't mean that. I've had a lot of people around me, they post all that crap out in the real world, help your people out, support your friend's business, blah, 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 all this stuff, but they don't live that, and that immediately set the precedent in my head that I'm never going to do that. I'm not going to portray something and then be the opposite person, in real life. So I think like that would make me, feel like I could have more impact, even if it's 1 or 2 or 3 people, if they looked at me at any sort of success, or they wanted to do like what I did coming up, and it helped somebody. That would make me feel good.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's more of like getting involved with some of the ex-athletes and guys that are stepping away from sports because of my past sports history, and seeing them use what they've built in the athletic kind of realm and apply that into what they want to do in the real world has given me some self-worth feeling of like, man, I can help somebody how to manage that work ethic that they had at something, and now that's gone.
Yeah.
You have to put that into something else that you love, and if you do that, whether that's sewing a pillow or wrenching or cleaning or flipping burgers or running a business, whatever it is, you can be very good at it if you're disciplined and willing.
You put the time in.
Thank you. You're willing to go through that. And that's what we are proving here, I think, at Label. And anybody that's come and put their time in here, They have seen success. What they've done with that success during that time, whether short or long, has been ultimately their decision. And I think when you look at that group as a whole, who's put all into it and who's pushed, what opportunities came for them out of that, I think it's always been on the upside. And then it's ultimately your responsibility as an individual to figure out, all right,
Yep.
where do I want to take this and how much do I want to invest into it? And I think seeing that happen for us in the media space is, it makes me feel good, not because, hey, more people see us, but because we always knew that was there. I knew that was there 7-8 years ago when I started just by myself because of what I was doing in my experience. But I'm like, I don't have any way to tell the story. And then it was finding people that could tell the story for us, availability. And then we're trying to run a business at the same time.
Exactly.
So then you get to the point where you're like, all right, telling the story isn't that important. We got to run the business, But I feel like we're in a great space now. We're on some amazing trends. All of that is due to the dedication of the guys here, but also you guys watching and supporting us. It does mean the world. We're just a small time outfit. So to see the growth that we've had, I'm just super appreciative and thankful. And that's probably the biggest thing for 2025 is the support for the cars has continued to grow. That's felt great. I love it. The support online has been overwhelmingly positive. Seeing that growth has been great. I love it. So going into 2026, I think expanding upon those, figuring out where, if we add another element to the cog, what that does for us, seeing you add to your family in 2026 and see as Daddy Dusty shows up, because now you're going to be Daddy Dusty or whatever. That sounds
It'll be
weird,
interesting.
right?
It does. Yeah.
Right. But seeing where we can take that, and as we mature into that next phase of label and get into the second half of the 5 years, the second 5 years that go to 10, where we can really take this machine that we've started in.
It's all exciting.
I feel really good about it, and I think we're going to start 2026 off with a bang because we have a very special guest that will be joining us that we're planning for right now. So I think we'll kind of leave it with you at that. Hopefully I didn't ramble too much, but I do want to talk more rather than just about the cars. I think it was great. Thank you for bringing the car list for us to kind of look at today. I think doing more of that is great. And then also talking a bit more about the business, some things that we don't like about it, some things that we see, just educating the clients and letting you guys know really the stuff that we do that I think makes us unique. So when you're choosing us from afar or you don't know us, that element of trust or understanding of what happens when you walk inside of these four walls, and how serious we take it, just like it's our own.
Yeah, for sure. Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you for listening once again. And we'll see you in 2026.
Sounds good. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year, guys. Happy holidays. And that's a wrap from the studio. Let's turn the heat on.